YoNasDa, welcome. I'm so happy to have you with us today at the Return to the Heart Educational Learning Series we're doing. Um, we are celebrating African American History Month, and you were born in a time of historical moments. But before I get started, let me just give a little introduction, and then I'll pass it to you to further introduce yourself. YoNasDa LoneWolf is an enrolled Ogallala Lakota Sioux, Native American and Black, born during AIMS, or American Indian Movement's longest walk in Washington, D.C. I actually remember that. A little older than you. As a kid, I remember it was happening. I had family in it. Um, so YoNasDa has, a lot of amazing background. She has been a national community and human rights activist, a motivational speaker, a media personality seen on BET, VH1, and Revolt. Published a writer, which I'm excited that you're going to share about a little later, and a former rap artist, but most importantly, a mother born in a time of history. And we're so happy to have you today to tell us a little bit about that history. But, first of all, if you can share with all of us, how do you identify? And, so many times, people are always talking about, and I even said it, American Indian, you know,
Yes.
the Indian part was a mistake, hundreds of years ago. Why are we still saying it?
Yes, yes.
But let me pass it to you.
Yeah, I know that now we're in a time everyone is saying Afro-Indigenous or Afro-Native. I think because I was born in 1978, I never we kind of moved away from the Afro word. Even in the African American community, we don't say Afro-American. So I don't really like the word Afro because so I just say that I am Black and Native American. I do use Black, or I use African American. My father is a descendant of Africa. His ancestors were kidnapped and stolen and brought here to America. And so as far back as the Zulu tribe, my family has traced their roots all the way far as back as there. And I love the richness of both of these amazing race of people, from my mother, Native American, and I'm sorry, something must have fell. My mother, Native American, and my dad being Black African American. So I love and I love that there are two separate, but they came together to have me, and they raised me. My mother really raised me to learn who I am as a Lakota woman, and then who I am as and then she brought me around a lot of amazing Black matriarchal women to teach me about how to be a Black woman. My mother could not teach me how to be a Black woman. She could teach me how to be a Native woman. And so she brought me around a strong unit of of Black women to teach me about my Blackness, and in a village that way, from my hair to even some of the colorism that I dealt with growing up. And so I am grateful for that. So I love the distinction of being Black and Native American, because I cannot deny my mother and father. And I remember growing up, when they always said your race, like put your race down, and I always would just mark both, when they said check one. And now you could check multiple, but growing up, you couldn't check multiple. You could only check one. And so I used to always check two and get in trouble for it. But I said, I can't, you're not denying your mother and you're not denying your father. Why do you feel that I have to deny mine? So, yeah.
That's awesome. So now, how did your activist parents come together?
So my mother, she was the first Native American to work for NBC. How she got that was they were trying to look for they were trying to fill in a quota at NBC in New York City, and they was looking for a Native American that had their bachelor's degree. And so my mother was in South Dakota. She was and she happened to have a bachelor's degree, and they was like, "Hey, we see at this university, I forgot the name of I think it's in Nebraska, that everyone kind of goes to, from South Dakota, Nebraska. What's that one called that everyone goes to? I forgot. It's on the border town of Nebraska, but Haskell. I think it was Haskell. I think that's it, Haskell. But anyway, so she was there, and so she ended up going to New York. My mother said it was like the concrete jungle. Like it was a huge, and it was the first time for her to meet other Native Americans that did not look like her. Growing up on one res and never venturing out, and especially growing up as an Ogallala, she it's already bad enough that we don't learn our own history, but it's also even worse. We don't learn each other tribal histories and that about other tribes. And so it was the first time that she was learning about other natives. She didn't know about the Shinnecock and all of the other tribes from that area. And she was like, wow, you look Puerto Rican, you look Cuban, you look white, like it was just all of this. And so it was a cultural shock for her. And she didn't understand why everyone was starting to really poke fun of that, that they thought that Native Americans were some ancient beings. And so I think that really empowered her in regards to who she is. And so she ended up going to a party. She met Muhammad Ali, and Muhammad Ali immediately called her Pocahontas. And she didn't know who Pocahontas was. And so he said, I'm gonna call you Pocahontas. And that became her nickname. And she accepted it until someone ended up telling her, do you know who Pocahontas really is? And she's like, well, you have to tell the heavyweight champion of the world to stop calling me Pocahontas. But she ended up becoming his public relations director. And so she was the woman behind the Thriller of Manila, the Rumble in the Jungle. And this was really her introduction into the Black community, into the sports world. She learned a lot about, PR and marketing and all of that. And one thing that she saw that was a void was Native American representation. And so she ended up meeting my father. My father was a fine artist. His stuff was like, he was like, basically his artwork was like, if you had a Thaddeus McCall art piece in your house, then you had money. Like his stuff was really amazing. And so they fell in love after 6 months. They got married at the Beverly Hills Hotel, star-studded. She had name us Jane Kennedy was her maid of honor. The Temptations was there, the Four Tops, the list goes on and on. It was a celebrity studded, and every media was there because they're like, oh, what big wedding is this with all these celebrities? And because she also had some high profile clients, it was just an amazing wedding. But what my mother did not know was that my father was also into kind of like blue collar crimes and money and things like that. And so that's what he ended up being in prison most of my life. My mother was my primary caretaker. And she just I would think that, so when, for me, being born during the American Indian movement, the longest walk was I was in her stomach, and all it was me and I believe it was Russell Means and Mary Crow Dog's child that they had. I think it was no, I'm sorry, not Mary Crow Dog, Leonard Crow Dog, and not Russell Means. Let me just put that out there. Not Russell Means child, but Mary Crow Dog and Leonard Crow Dog's son, and another child and myself were the only three children born during the longest walk. So I was born in DC when they got to DC from Alcatraz, San Francisco to Washington, DC. So I was literally born with my fist up. And I remember AIM song was like a lullaby song to me. That AIM song was just like, I would hear that and it was always so familiar. Even to this day, when I hear the AIM song, I'm like, oh, that's like my lullaby. Is to hear that cry for justice and representation, that we're still here. And so being born around all of these all of these great activists and leaders that we now read about in history books, was a great honor. And I learned so much from all of them. And I think that it was instilled in me to be able to stand up and fight for injustices of humankind and our mother earth all around the earth. Yeah.
So for folks who don't know what the longest walk was, can you just a quick little explanation of what that is?
Yeah, so it was a walk from Alcatraz, San Francisco. It first started with the siege of Alcatraz, the American Indian movement, as well as the Chicano movement, the Black Panthers, the Rainbow Coalition. Like it was all of like this beautiful four direction of movement. Activists came together and said, let's take over Alcatraz. They did, and then they said, you know what, we're not being heard. I mean, it was it was amazing, but they was like, it's now time to head to DC. And it was really for our Freedom of Religious Act. The reason why we are able to burn sage and say a prayer publicly is because of the sacrifice of those that were a part of the American Indian movement, the longest walk. And so Phyllis Young, Russell Means, Dennis Banks, the list goes on of so many, and even, Madonna Thunderhawk, so many amazing women. I want to acknowledge these women because we always talk about the men of the American Indian movement, but there was some powerful women, that were also right there writing these laws and these to make sure that we're able to have the Freedom of Religious Act. So because of them and their sacrifices, why we're able to publicly pray without being murdered and being imprisoned, because before they were scared of our sage and our smoke signals. They were scared. They're like, oh my God, what are they doing? But now we're able to do it freely.
Uh, so you mentioned, fighting for justice. And so that's, deep in your bloodline, in your roots. But,
Yes.
one of the things that we're facing today is, the absolute crisis that as many times is like just silent crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women. And so looking up statistics, when I looked at Black women of, again, US populations, if you look at who are the victims, who are the human trafficking victims, Black
Mhm.
women are 40%, and so are Native American women. That's
Yeah.
crazy. That's
Yeah.
not acceptable.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really because when we look at that, and me being Black and Native, it's affecting me twice. And it's a lot of injustices that are affecting me double time. I'm here living in Atlanta, Georgia. We're one of the top statistics of Black women that are being murdered and kidnapped and missing. This is a huge human sex trafficking area, especially for Black women. We're looked upon, just as Native women are looked upon, as like some type of folklore, or a just like, I want to say, what's the word I want to use, like not abstract, but just like mysterious, or what's that word, that like it's over sexualized. They over sexualize us, and so I think that with me, it affected me personally. My sister cousin Annie, she's my first cousin, and my sister cousin Shelly, she was my first cousin. They were sisters. Shelly, we couldn't find her. It was around Halloween, and we couldn't find her for like 3 days until she was found on the side of the road in South Dakota, beat up. They ran her over, and we ended up finding out it was her friends that beat her up and ran, but we couldn't find her until, and just that feeling of trying to find her for 3 days, and then we ended up finding her, and then fast forward, her little sister Annie, there was some sex traffickers that was taking a Native girl, and Annie said, you guys gonna have to go through me in order to get her, and they ended up shooting her. And so my aunt Wilma, poor bear, I pray for her all the time because she lost two daughters to MMIW. And the way that her strength is with this, and the way that she's able to carry on as a great grandmother now, and I had Shelly's three daughters. They lived with me here in Atlanta. And the way that they honor their mother, is just beautiful. The way that they fight for MMIW. I think that, it can happen to anyone. A friend of mine just emailed me. This person is a non-binary person, Native. that is in North Carolina, and they can't find this person. They don't know where they're at. So I'm just like, it can happen just like that, and I think more laws, the same way that we have Amber Alert for children, there needs to be more alerts, like how the state of California now has an alert for MMIW. But I feel that it needs to be more alerts, just like California, all across, nationally, and as well as internationally. I met someone that was telling me a story that his best friend's daughter, within they end up finding her 6 months later, but within 24 hours from Detroit, Michigan, someone kidnapped her and got her all the way to Colombia in
Mm.
24 hours. So the way that they're taking our children, taking our women, our men, so quickly, and putting them in other continents, for human trafficking, is just a scary, scary thing. And yeah, so it affects me on multiple areas, on both sides.
Yeah. And the statistics, affect our families and even us, I was sharing last year about being chased on a rural highway,
Oh my
and
God.
um I was able to get away. I had the kids in the car, and I was sharing it with um a colleague who told me that happened to her just like the month before. So it's like
Oh
these
my
are
God.
things that are happening like right now that we need to be sounding, the alarm. This cannot be a silent crisis anymore. We need to do something. And so
Yeah.
looking forward to, building that momentum and lifting up those voices. And thank you for mentioning your family, your cousins' names. I mean, that's so important that we know that these are our family, our sisters. We have to
Yeah.
speak out and be that voice whenever we can.
Yes.
So, given, your experience, your life history, fighting for justice, what do you see have been like some of the wins, and also some of like where do we need to go? Like how can the folks out there, our allies, our sisters, stand and fuel the fight for justice? Because sometimes it's like, can't we just have a big win?
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
Dr. Martin Luther King talks about the long arc. I'm
Yeah.
tired of the longness. It's time for a
Yeah.
win.
Yes. I think that you know, we are in a place where it is tiring. It's a
Mhm.
lot, and for me, for these past couple of years, here in Atlanta, we're fighting on the militarized police training facility called Cop City. They're already building it, and they've lied to us several times as taxpayers that they're going to spend XYZ amount of money, and end up being more. And so, and they're going to tear down all this forest, our last forest here in Atlanta, in the inner city part of Atlanta, in the Black community, where they're building this. And we just got word that there are 69 cop cities that are being built here in America. So alone, and they're militarized police training facilities right in the heart of predominantly urban communities that are affecting BIPOC people, and it's for them to be trained, for them to be able to be trained to shoot to kill. There's no training in regards to, cultural diversity and how to deal with people that have a mental illness, or any of that. But we're really in a crazy time. We're seeing a war happening, not just in Gaza. Well, a genocide happening, not just in Gaza, but also we're seeing it in Sudan, and we're seeing it in the Congo. And it's so it does get a lot. And I feel for the past couple of years since battling cancer, I've been on self-improvement. On the basis of community development is self-improvement. And I feel that even though as many times we want to go outward, I think it's important to balance it, to go inward, and to really balance home, and to really balance your well-being, because we are in the time of war. War is not fun. War is ugly. War is horrible. And because we're in this time and it just seems like a lot, we have to balance it out with self-improvement. We have to find our time for therapy, for, being quiet. We don't have to speak out about everything we see on the news, but speaking out at the right time with wisdom, you know, um, and listening to our elders. One thing I love about being Indigenous is the fact that on my Black and my Native side, we have a long history of talking to our wisdom keepers, our griots, our medicine people that are in our village or in our tribe, and I think that we have to get back to that. So this is to my Black relatives that's watching this, and to my Native relatives. We have to get back to connecting back to village, connecting back to community, talking to our elders. Remember, there's a difference between old people and elders, but talking to our elders, because they've seen this too. They've seen World War I, World War II, if they're still here, Vietnam Wars, they've seen the world go up, they even were not that far long ago from segregation time, and I think that it's like, how did you deal with this? How did you handle this? I know that you fought on the front lines for this, but how did you find your balance? And I think it's time for us to begin to start seeking that wisdom in order for us to be able to know how to deal in the next 5 to 10 years, because it's going to get even much uglier. But if we begin to start self-improving now, I feel that it would be an example for this future generation to know, like, okay, like, I forgot this person's name, but he just yesterday, Jewish, young, Jewish, US Air Force man, he set himself on fire, and his last words was "Free Palestine," 25 years old. And he said, and that's what he said. And I was looking at his age. I feel that this generation is tired of the old ways of war, of hatred, doesn't matter what race or religion they are, they do not want to see babies being burned across the board, don't want to see killings no more. And I feel that when he did that, it was a cry of a change. And I feel that we have to listen to our young people, and we have to set examples, to be an example of how can we, so, justice has to be peace. Justice has to be peace. It cannot be the way we fought for justice. Right now, we have to, every single day while battling this lung cancer, I wake up every morning and I said, I have to fight for my joy. How am I going to fight for my joy? That means eliminating all negativity around me. And I feel that this new generation, my son is the same, he's 12 years old. He's just like, I just want happiness. And he will do whatever means to be happy. And I think that that's because we just have to set an example. We have to set an example, or if not, then they're going to push us out the way and show us the example. And unfortunately, I don't like that it took his death to show us that we needed to listen to him and to listen to other 20-year-olds, and other young people that are saying, I'm going to set myself on fire. I would sacrifice my life if you don't stop this war, because we need that generation, so yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. You've been an example in many ways, educating others. You have a podcast and a
Yes.
children's book.
Yes.
Share a little bit about both.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have this book. Yep. The Adventures of Star Song. It's loosely, it's kind of blurry. Okay, there it goes. Adventures of Star Song. It is loosely based off of my life, but it's about a 8-year-old girl. She's Native American and Black, African American. And she ended up having uh I would say spirit guides that come and give her gifts on how to be able to deal with things in the world. And so this is volume 1, Who Am I? And it's basically to show children and those that have read it, to be able to identify with just being uniquely different. And with being uniquely different, how you can have special powers if you take on the gifts of your ancestors. And so she takes on the gifts from her spirit guides or her ancestors that give her these gifts, to be able to handle the things that she's dealing with. And I think that if we lean on our ancestors a little bit more to give us gifts, then we can be able to, combat anything that comes to us. So that's what the base of the book, The Adventures of Star Song. And I also have my podcast. I'm about to go right back into production again, but it's called Walking My Moccasins. I have interviewed, well, as you know, there's the proverb, we never know a man or a woman until they walk a mile in your moccasins. And so I just interview various people and have them share their story. I think you can learn a lot in regards to what you're dealing with in your life to be able to hear someone else's testimony. I think it's the Native and the Black in me that just loves to hear people just share their stories, And so and it's crazy because I've interviewed various people on it and know them all my life, and I didn't even know all of these things that they were sharing with me. I was like, wow, I really don't know you. So it's also been an opportunity for me to be able to learn from people from media to the entertainment industry to activism, people that have went viral. So it's called Walking My Moccasins, and you could listen to it on wherever you listen to your podcast, and you can listen to that. And I'll be going back into production. I'm doing it in front of a live studio here in Atlanta and doing a series of that here in Atlanta soon. So you can just follow me at Queen YoNasDa or Queen YoNasDa for updates on things that I'll be doing.
Great, great. And where can they find your book?
Yeah, on anywhere books are sold. So it's on everything. It's on Amazon, it's on Barnes and Noble. So it's called Adventures of Star Song. So yeah, that's
Awesome.
it.
Can't wait to read it. All right. Well, is there any last words?
Yeah, so I would say that, this Black History Month, um, it is the shortest month of the year, that we've received this month. But, for all my Native relatives that are tuning in, the same way that we ask for everyone to learn something on each day for Native American Heritage Month in November, please do the same thing for Black History Month. There are more people outside of Dr. King and Malcolm X and Harriet Tubman, there's so many not just from the past, but even from the present. There's so many contributions of Black Americans that have contributed to the building of America. So it's important that and inventors too. So put yourself on homework and give your children a task as well, outside. I mean, we know everything about Dr. King and we love Dr. King, but, but I think there's so much more within Black history. And it's crazy because when my nieces came from South Dakota in 2015, they came here from Pine Ridge, and I took them over to the Martin Luther King Civil Rights Museum, and they just wept. They did not know about segregation. They did not know about the abuse. They was like, this happened here in America? And I was like, yeah. They said, oh my God. Like they did not know because on the res, they wasn't taught about these things. And so it was shocking for them. They went through it. So I had to go through a whole, history of over 400 years of history that I had to teach of Black American history. So, it's important. And it's also great that we have these months. Next month of March is Women's History Month, so it's good that we have these months to be able to, but let's do it 365 years. And let's also be able to, learn these things so we can learn one another and how we can be able to unite unite in everything that we're doing, from our voices being united on MMIW, from our voices being united on a whole bunch of land rights and everything, so much stuff, because we're all being affected by oppression and greed. So it's important that we unite our fight.
Yes, yes. And thank you so much about mentioning the history, because just as the kids weren't being taught on the res, everyone is not getting taught the
Yeah,
depth and the extent of the history. So one
yeah.
little paragraph in a textbook is not cutting it. When I was living in DC, one of the
Hmm.
most powerful books that and I'll be honest, I didn't read it. I listened through,
Yes.
listening services, was The Black History of the White House, because
Wow.
the public does not know this history. We did not learn it in our educational systems. We did
Yeah.
not learn it. And it's so
Yeah.
powerful, especially to take the kids there and say, this happened here. This
Hmm.
here, and it's documented. So I would highly recommend that book for, any adult who wants to just like, let's talk some truth. So
Yes.
well, thank you so
Yeah.
much for joining us today. I'm going to go ahead and leave us with one of the quotes that you had given to us, which is so powerful. But we appreciate you. We love you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much, Doksha.